U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that the United States has begun what he described as major combat operations in Iran, accusing the Iranian regime of carrying out what he called an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder targeting the United States. Trump released an 8-minute video on Truth Social in the early hours of the morning in the U.S., shortly after explosions were reported in the Iranian capital, Tehran. In that statement, he said Iran could never have a nuclear weapon and said that was why Operation Midnight Hammer struck Iran's nuclear program at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. He also claimed that Iran had rejected every opportunity to renounce its nuclear ambitions and had continued developing long-range missiles that could, in his words, threaten allies in Europe, American troops stationed overseas, and could soon reach the American homeland. In the same remarks, Trump said the United States would destroy Iran's missiles, raze its missile industry to the ground, and annihilate its navy. He also said the Iranian regime had chanted "Death to America" for 47 years and warned that American casualties were possible, saying the lives of courageous American service members may be lost. Trump then addressed the people of Iran directly, telling them that the hour of their freedom was at hand and urging them to take over their government. As events unfolded, the article reports that the United States and Israel launched attacks on Iran, while Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said Israel had carried out a preemptive strike on Tehran. Explosions were reported in multiple Iranian cities, and Israel later said Iran had launched retaliatory missile strikes toward Israeli territory. As more details emerged from Trump's statement, he said the United States had repeatedly tried to reach an agreement with Iran, saying, "We sought repeatedly to make a deal, we tried." He also said Iran had attempted to rebuild its nuclear program while continuing to develop long-range missiles that, in his words, could threaten allies in Europe, American troops stationed overseas, and could soon reach the American homeland. Speaking earlier, Trump had also said that no final decision had been made on whether the U.S. would strike Iran, while expressing dissatisfaction with Iran's position during nuclear talks. He said Iran was not willing to give the United States what it had to have and repeated that Iran could not have nuclear weapons. The article notes that indirect talks in Geneva had taken place earlier in the week, with both sides saying progress had been made toward a possible deal. In a separate report within the same coverage, BBC News Middle East correspondent David Gritton said Trump urged Iranians to use the attacks to overthrow the country's clerical establishment. In his earlier video statement, Trump said that when the operation was finished, Iranians should take over their government, calling it what he described as probably their only chance for generations. He also addressed members of the Iranian security forces, saying they would be given immunity if they laid down their arms or would otherwise face certain death. The article adds that in early January, Trump threatened to bomb Iran as security forces cracked down on nationwide anti-government protests, during which at least 6,480 people were killed, according to human rights activists. Days later, however, he said he had received assurances from Iran's government that the killing had stopped, and his focus then shifted back to Iran's nuclear program, which the article says has long been at the center of a dispute with the West. The article says explosions were heard across several cities in Iran as the attacks unfolded. Iranian media reported blasts in Isfahan, Qom, Karaj, and Kermanshah, as well as in the capital, Tehran. Fars news agency reported that several missiles hit University Street and the Republic area of Tehran, while the Islamic Republic news agency said explosions were heard in 2 locations in the capital and that smoke could be seen in the center of the city. BBC Monitoring also reported that IRB News, Tasnim, Fars, Mer, and ISNA news websites were not accessible, at least from abroad. This concludes the reported developments in the article, including the U.S. announcement of major combat operations, Israeli and Iranian military responses, official statements from both sides, and the wider disruption reported as the crisis escalated.